When it comes to ceasefire talks between the resistance group Hamas and the Israeli regime, hopes continue to fade. It has become pretty obvious that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has become the obstacle, and Hamas has done its best to reach a deal without giving up on Palestinians' rights. Hamas doesn't even have a presence at the talks. Ahead of the most recent truce talks, Hamas had called on mediators to implement U.S. President Joe Biden's plan outlined in late May. The first phase would last up to 6 weeks. These are just some of them. It would include a full and complete ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israeli regime forces from all densely populated areas of Gaza. In continuation of the first phase, the release of a number of captives in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners would take place. It would also include humanitarian assistance. That would be 600 trucks that would be allowed into the Gaza Strip each day. The second phase would include the release of all the remaining living captives, and that includes male regime forces. It would also include the withdrawal of the remainder of the Israeli regime forces from the Gaza Strip. The temporary ceasefire would potentially lead to the cessation of hostilities permanently. Now, the third phase calls for the start of a major reconstruction of Gaza, which is going to face decades of rebuilding because, as you can see here, there's so many structures that have been destroyed. This is due to the devastation, obviously, caused by the bombs that have been dropped, as an example. And these structures that have been destroyed, well, accounts for almost 80% for each of these sectors that you see here that existed before the onslaught. Unlike the week-long truce that collapsed at the end of November, this ceasefire would be indefinitely extendable while negotiators thrash out details of the next stage. And that's important, so that an impasse, if it were to happen, would not necessarily trigger a return to hostilities. Again, notes there's no Hamas negotiator at this table in this round of ceasefire talks. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again jeopardized the ceasefire talks altogether by putting forward new proposals. Israel's new conditions include keeping regime forces inside of Gaza along its border with Egypt that you see down there. It's called the Philadelphia Corridor. To continue the occupation of the Netzarim Junction, that's in the center of the Gaza Strip that you see there, and the rejection of a permanent ceasefire and a comprehensive withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Well, Israel has also demanded veto rights on the Palestinian prisoners to be exchanged and the ability to deport some prisoners rather than send them back to Gaza. Well, in terms of the captives, just so you're aware, Hamas seized 251 of them, 111 of whom are still held in Gaza, including 39 who are dead. More than 100 were freed during a one-week truce back in November. When it comes to Hamas, it had demanded a complete ceasefire, a complete withdrawal from the Strip, a normal return of the displaced, and a prisoner exchange deal without restrictions. Well, as a goodwill gesture, it actually dropped a demand for the full ceasefire at the outset, rather than initial 6-week pause put forward by the U.S. President Joe Biden. Well, the stakes have risen since the late July assassinations of resistance leaders like the Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh and the top Hezbollah military commander Fuad Shukr. Both Iran and Hezbollah have vowed a response which has not materialized yet, although the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that Gaza talks may be the last chance for truce. Hamas believes the U.S. is actually buying time for Israel to continue with the genocide. Meanwhile, Iran believes the U.S. should not even be a mediator since it can't be a neutral one.